Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Kevin. I am Falcoholic Kevin. We've got a great game preview for you today. We're going to be breaking down Falcons versus Bills on Monday Night Football in Week 6. And I've got Joe Miller at Joe Miller Wired on X, Twitter, whatever they call it these days. He's from Overreaction Buffalo, the founder and a host and a producer. So you're wearing a lot of hats over there, Joe. How are you doing today?
Great. Just excited to be joining you. Excited for the opportunity to just talk about the Buffalo Bills. I love the Falcoholics line. That's pretty cool. I have not heard that one. So obviously it goes right along with our Bills Mafia. So
yeah,
we're right there together. But yes, I do wear a lot of hats over at Overreaction. Founded it in 2019, was by myself for a very long time. And then last year, we were with Buffalo Rumblings for several years. Myself, John Fina, former Buffalo Bill, and former Buffalo Bill Jerry Ostrowski. And then if everybody remembers, Vox Media fired everybody that was doing a podcast in every major market and every major sport. So we found ourselves kind of on an island, and all of my stuff coexisted in the background. So it was like, well, let's just jump over and do our own thing. So we started at zero last year in April and doing really, really well. Got picked up, I believe, last July. So yeah, excited to be here.
Yes, I have a very similar story. I still work at the Falcoholic, but same exact situation, very similar timeline. So thanks to Believe for stepping up and saving a lot of these podcasts.
Yes.
Because we would have lost a lot of great podcasters and great content. So I'm appreciative of that and glad that you guys could jump on the Believe train too. It's been an adventure so far. So
it has been. Yes.
Yeah, and speaking of adventures, the season for the Falcons has been a little more rough and tumble than the Bills, but the Bills themselves, I as someone who watched the game with some Bills fans at a local Bills bar, as I live in Syracuse, not too happy coming off this last game. So Monday Night Football, a big opportunity, obviously, for Buffalo to right the ship for the Falcons. They're looking to make a statement and show that they're a team that should be taken seriously. And after losing 0-30 to the Panthers, they could really use something like that. So how are you sort of feeling about the state of the Bills? Obviously, tough game this last week.
So I would say that no Bills fan was probably surprised by what we saw from an execution standpoint on offense or defense in that football game. That's very much what the Bills have kind of looked like all season, to include the Ravens game that they won. And then Josh Allen put the cape on and does what Josh Allen does in that game and brought them back, which was something that, like, that game was bizarre and wild and awesome for many different reasons. I feel like, this is a Buffalo Bills team. I don't want to say that necessarily plays down to the level of their opponents or plays to the level of their opponents, but we're a team that, doing this podcast with two former NFL players that played during the Super Bowl era of the Buffalo Bills. They're very poignant about the fact that when opposing team players and opposing teams get their schedule, they circle the Buffalo Bills. Like, this, more than it's potentially going to be on prime time. Like, this is a game that we want to show out and show up for. We're not just going to roll over. When the Bills played the Saints were getting slaughtered by teams, and they gave us a game. So I would like to feel that most Bills fans are not, like I said, surprised by what we saw in that football game against the Patriots. The Bills beat themselves in a lot of ways. The refs were, I don't like to blame the refs, but the refs were, Hockey League has a history of not reffing the Bills overly fairly. If you don't believe me, go back and watch the Bills-Eagles game from a couple of years ago, where he threw 8 offensive penalties on the Bills early, and Josh Allen got horse collared and thrown to the ground, and Hockey League called him for an intentional grounding, which was super wild. But I would expect this team to find itself in the Sean McDermott era. I'm giving you a lot. I'm sorry, Kevin.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
In the Sean McDermott era, they haven't lost many games, like 2 back-to-back games, and I don't think they've lost 3 in a row since Josh Allen kind of took the Josh Allen jump, the Josh Allen leap, or even before that. So they've been a pretty solid team coming back off of a defeat. They've done a good job of finding themselves. They usually go on a tear. They usually go on like an 8-game tear. So yeah.
Yeah, I think Falcons fans were hoping we could be the scrappy upstart that got the upset over the Bills. Maybe sleeping a little bit. Probably not as likely to have that outcome, like you said, coming off a frustrating division loss to the Patriots. Who we all hate the Patriots. So
we all hate the Patriots. They're even worse this week. They've won a game, and it's like Stephon Diggs dancing in the locker room. It's like, congratulations, you won your Super Bowl for the year. Congrats. The Bills are still going to win the East. You got your Super Bowl.
Exactly. And, the Bills are very talented. There's no doubt about that. And Josh Allen, like you said, is a superhero. And they're a team that's capable of beating anyone. But like you said, also has a tendency to play down. So that's what the Falcons will be hoping for this week, is that maybe the Bills don't play their best game. Maybe the Falcons can put together their best game and have an opportunity here. Right now, per FanDuel, I believe the line is still 4.5-point road favorites for Buffalo, which to me seems pretty fair. I think the market's maybe backed off a little bit after last week when I believe they were 8.5-point favorites, and they're like, okay, we're not as open to that. But the Falcons have a history on primetime, especially over the last year, of really playing great football games. Not necessarily winning the games, but providing a lot of entertainment. And, with Michael Penix, obviously, very exciting style of football there. Bijan Robinson, a lot of star players. So really excited to see how the Falcons fare against one of the true Super Bowl contending teams. It'll give us a lot of information, even if Atlanta might not be able to squeak out a win here. But before we dive more into the game itself, let's take a look at the injuries. We're recording this, obviously, it's a Monday game. We don't have a ton of information about the injury report right now. But what are the major or just notable injuries that the Bills are kind of watching going into week 6?
So the offensive line 2 weeks ago against the Saints, we sat Spencer Brown. Spencer Brown was back against the Patriots. So the offensive line is intact at this point. Connor McGovern, I think, our center left the game against the Patriots a couple times, or at least at one point went to the locker room, finished the game. So the offensive line is intact. All of the offensive, as far as talent goes, is all intact. Josh did come up hobbled off of a play last week. It hit the ground kind of hard, bumped his knee on the ground, and it came up and was limping for a couple plays after that. Josh is going to come out in his presser today like he always does and say, I'm fine, everything will be fine, even if he's got a brace on it that they're covering up underneath his clothes, which they've done a million times. It's like you zoom in on something, it's like he's wearing an arm brace, so he's not okay. But he still goes out there and plays. Defensively is where there's a little more question marks. Ed Oliver has been out since week 1. Our three-tech defensive tackle, who is the engine, if you will, the motor of this defense. He, I'm guessing, is expected to play. He's been back practicing last week. We'll obviously find out more. I would expect him to practice. They'll probably have him on not a limited, but a questionable standpoint. Matt Milano for this game is out. He's got a pec injury they haven't declared him out. Sean McDermott came out on Monday in his post-game presser, his Monday presser after the Patriots game, and said he's got a pec injury. He's not going to go to IR. He did not finish the game against the Patriots. However, he's not hurt enough to go on IR. So it's a week-to-week thing. He may play this week. I would guess he wouldn't. It literally is our linebacking core that's probably the most beat up right now. Dorian Williams is also injured. I don't know what his status is. He has not played in a couple of weeks. However, the Buffalo Bills also picked up Shaq Thompson from Carolina, and I think maybe he was with the Bucs for a stint, former Sean McDermott guy, and he has been a wonderful surprise in relief for some of these guys. But at the end of the day, the big one is Ed Oliver, who should play, Matt Milano, who's probably not going to play. Those are probably the two biggest injuries on this football team right now.
Yeah. Matt Milano's kind of that linchpin player for the back half of the defense, and then Ed Oliver kind of the linchpin in the middle. Yep. And really happy for Ed Oliver. He was a guy I was super high on coming out of the draft, and had a slow start, but has really grown, I think, into what everyone was hoping he would be. So shout out to him for realizing that potential and becoming one of the NFL's premier interior defenders. But yeah, on the Falcons side of things, the big one is AJ Terrell. The belief is that he will play this week. He hasn't played since the first half of week 2, coming off what was deemed a relatively minor hamstring injury. So he will be practicing this week, and the Falcons initially were very positive about his ability to play, and then kind of were like, well, we'll see at game time. But they seem pretty confident that he's going to play, assuming he doesn't have a setback. And then we'll be watching defensive lineman Taquan Graham, who's one of their rotational interior guys, and whether or not he can be activated off IR. He started his practice window this week. He can bolster the run defense, not necessarily a major contributor one way or the other, but the other major guy to watch would be Darnell Mooney, the Falcons wide receiver 2, who has just not really been able to get healthy so far this year. Missed all of training camp, looked kind of out of sorts early in the season, and then suffered a hamstring injury in week 4. It was also deemed to be minor, so he had the whole bye week off, and we'll see with the Monday night timeline if he can be back out there. But that's the other one really to watch for Atlanta this week. But otherwise, the Falcons are down Caleb McGarry at right tackle, but Elijah Wilkinson, who was their third string tackle because their second string tackle is on IR as well, has been fine. So that's a nice surprise. But yeah, sorry to cut you off. Did you have a question as well?
I was going to ask you about Drake London. Drake London doesn't have an injury designation. He's on one of my fantasy teams. That's the only reason I get some insider information here. So he seems to be okay at this point.
Yeah, he had a shoulder injury in week 1, and I think that kind of affected him for the next week or two. Just didn't look just fully Drake London. We know how aggressive he is and how much passion he plays with. Just looked like he was hurting. Against the Commanders, he was back to his full self. He looked fine. So I'm guessing he's full go, and I'm firing him up everywhere I got him. Which, I mean, obviously you probably are no matter what, unless you're really blessed with receivers. But I have no concerns about London going forward. I think he's once again going to be one of the top target hogs in the NFL, and Penix is willing to throw the ball downfield, which is a nice change from what we've had in Atlanta for a while. So,
love to hear it. Love to hear it. Hate to hear it.
Yeah, right. I mean, so we can get into it with talking about the Falcons offense, obviously, versus the Bills defense. The Bills and the Falcons, probably more surprising on the Falcons end of things that the Falcons defense has been good, but Falcons offense has been relatively disappointing, mostly in the 0-30 game to the Panthers, which is just kind of inexplicable on every level. Then they come out and drop, almost 40 on the Commanders the next week. Doesn't really make any sense to me, but that is what it is. So the Falcons are lagging behind in scoring in a major way, just 19 points per game because of the shutout. But everywhere else, they look good. 7th in total yardage. I believe they're 13th in passing yardage, and then high up in obviously the rushing, 6th in rushing yardage as well. So offensively, Falcons are moving the ball very well, but the scoring, culminating basically in that shutout loss has been inconsistent, particularly in the red zone. Bills defense, very good once again. They're obviously one of the top defenses in total yardage allowed. They're also very good in scoring. More like average in scoring, but, overall good defense. The one place the Bills have been vulnerable is against the run, and that's probably where the Falcons are going to be pinning a lot of their hopes in this one. But like you said, if Ed Oliver's back, that definitely bolsters Buffalo's ability there.
Yeah, so defensively for the Bills, I mean, obviously Atlanta has talent across that offense, and it sounds like you guys are living in a very similar space to where we lived, which is that you're playing to the level of your opponent. Not down, just to the level as far as that goes. Down has such a derogatory note to it as far as that goes. And I don't want to say that teams are bad necessarily, but there's an aspect of teams playing up to the level of their opponent and teams playing down. So it just turns into everybody's playing at the level of. Anyway, nobody's getting steamrolled, unlike that Carolina Panthers game, which was bizarre. I watched that football game. I would say that it definitely was very strange. Defensively for the Buffalo Bills, you're going to see them probably force Bijan Robinson. They're going to ask Penix to throw the football. They're gonna do everything they can. They're gonna sell out on Bijan to shut him down, both running and more than likely receiving. So I would watch for that. The Bills have had trouble tackling this year, which is not uncommon for this football team early in the season. It seems like it's been on. So we do a show on Tuesdays called On the Beat, where we bring on a different Bills beat reporter every week, and that was a topic of conversation that the Bills are last in the league right now in tackling, and every year they have this problem with tackling, and then they kind of figure it out, which is bizarre. And we all ask the question, why? And why are you getting out of your run fits? And why are you losing your lanes? It's the same. Anyway, I digress. But I would probably watch for, like I said, the Bills to sell out on Bijan Robinson, make Michael Penix beat them. And then the secondary more than likely is going to keep a lot of the play in front of them. And that's what the Bills do. The Bills defense is a bend but don't break defense, 20-20. So between the 20s, and they expect you or want you to go on long extended drives, 12, 14 plays drives, at 14 play drives, make a mistake somewhere in there. And if you don't make a mistake, then they tighten up inside the 20s in the red zone to try to force you to kick a field goal. But that's what I would expect. Probably some missed tackles. They're gonna try to shut down Bijan. They're gonna ask Michael Penix to throw the football. Drake London's probably gonna have a pretty good game, just because that's the style of defense they play. But again, keeping in mind they're working on keeping everything in front of them, right? So great, you threw an 8-yard pass, an 8-yard out, do it again, right? Oh, great, you threw another one, do it again. So that's what you could probably expect from this defense.
Yeah. So you're thinking probably a lot of too high safety stuff. I don't know what
Yes.
coverages the Bills love, but yeah, I mean, a lot of teams have just been doing that against Penix because he's been awesome throwing the ball deep. If teams are going to play single high, he's going to launch it. He's been a little bit more cautious when he sees too high. And, there's been some criticisms about his willingness to take those intermediate throws over the middle. We did see a lot better, him doing that a lot better against the Commanders. But the Bills defense is a very difficult opponent in the passing game. There's no doubt about that. But, I think the Bills outside corners have actually maybe played really well against the run, but I think, in the passing game, maybe that's a spot, especially if Darnell Mooney's healthy, that the Falcons could get some advantages, but they have to be able to attack the middle of the field and attack the intermediate area, because like you said, if they're going to take away the deep stuff, that's the one area that I think Penix needs to grow the most, and his willingness to rip over the middle of the field and hit those intermediate routes and do it with consistent accuracy. And I think that's been where they've been trying to develop him more. But hopefully coming off the bye, maybe that's an area they've been drilling this over the past couple weeks and getting that ready, because Penix arm talent, excellent, but the consistency is what we're looking for at this point.
Yeah. I would also add that Sean McDermott has been pretty well known to be a defensive backfield secondary kind of whisperer. He was a safety in college. He knows how to effectively get his guys to play the way that he wants them to play. Christian Bedford is an elite corner. Trey White is an aging former elite corner. We've got some really good depth as far as like at the safety position. But what they're going to try to do, besides the too high stuff, is they're going to do what they can. And Sean McDermott is great at it. They're going to try to confuse Penix as far as what he sees. A lot of disguise coverages, a lot of dropouts, a lot of drop-ins. So that basically what Michael is seeing at the line of scrimmage, what he does, what every quarterback does, we're good. And then like looks down. And when he does that, people are going to move. So when he picks his head back up again with the football, it's going to look different. And his first, target or his first go-to is probably going to be taken away from him. But again, they're not necessarily going to press those passes. They're not going to press into him and try to challenge the passes. They're going to do what they can to keep guys in front of them.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they play it differently than the Commanders, who did something very similar where, the Commanders love to play a lot of cover 3, but they were showing a lot of too high, but they would rotate down a safety and then, use that to try to stop Bijan Robinson. Didn't really work either way, because I think Penix was kind of prepared for it. A lot of teams have been doing that so far, showing the too high to try to get him to be a little bit more cautious. And the Panthers worked great for them, but it seemed like the Commanders didn't fool them. So I'm interested to see how the Bills sort of react to that and what kind of spin they put on it with their coverage as well. But Falcons probably going to try to lean on the run like they always do, and if they can get success there, it'll make everything easier. But for Atlanta, it's just consistency and avoiding mistakes and keeping Penix clean, which remarkably the Falcons have done very well despite Caleb McGarry being gone, and they go to relatively unknown center, started about 8 games for them last year in reserve, and Ryan Newsel let Drew Dahlman walk for big money to the Bears, and Ryan Newsel's been excellent. So somebody there seems to know what they're doing on the offensive line, which is a welcome change from many years before that. But this is a tough matchup for the Falcons offense. It's definitely one of the better defenses they've played. And it's a little bit of a different look than they're going to see than they saw versus the Commanders, and especially versus the Vikings, who are, incredibly aggressive with everything they do. So different test here for Michael Penix in this Falcons offense. Switching sides to the Falcons defense, this has been the biggest surprise that I think all Falcons fans have experienced this year. Atlanta, number 1 in many defensive categories, passing yardage allowed. They're close to the top in yards per play. Overall yardage allowed, net yards per attempt, just 4.7. They've been a little bit more vulnerable against the runs. That's probably where this Bills team is going to have the most success. But really surprisingly, elite start to the season for the Falcons, who no one was really expecting this defense to be anything more than average, and that was even a rosy expectation given how poor they were last year. And we know how good the Bills' offense is, so this is definitely going to be the biggest test for this new look Falcons defense, and a good measuring stick to see if they're as legit as the stats say they are at this point.
Yeah, I would probably expect this Buffalo Bills offense to put up 30 points. That's effectively the number that they do. Even when we have many conversations as content creators about, oh, they got 30 points again, like, because we can't figure out necessarily how they got there because it's a very quiet kind of motor to it. Josh Allen is an elite thrower of the football. If you go back to 2020, 2021, he was one of the most dangerous quarterbacks in the NFL. That is still Josh Allen. But they have chosen, right, to effectively move into that space of the Pat Mahomes world of take what the defense gives you. And if I got to be dangerous, I'll be dangerous. Josh Allen, that is. And they've gotten a wonderful compliment in James Cook. The Bills are, to your point, I think top 3 in the league in running the football right now. But, they're doing a lot of screens. They're doing a lot of misdirection type stuff. They're doing a lot of orbit runs and just different things like that. They don't really have a number 1 wide receiver. It's a very, you're in Syracuse, you've heard it, the everybody eats mentality, which just effectively means that wherever the ball's supposed to go is where Josh is going to throw the football. I'm not going to try to force the ball to Stephon Diggs when he had Stephon Diggs, or I'm not going to force it in another area to feed a guy or feed my dominant receiver. If it's supposed to go to 2, I'll throw it to 2. If it's supposed to go to 1, I'll throw it to 1. It's kind of the world that he's living in. Where the Bills are sneaky, and they were kind of one of the first offenses to really make this shift, and a lot of offenses are changing, is in that tight end space. As much as you guys have what was supposed to be one of the most electric and dominant tight ends that was ever drafted, and it's funny because I feel like sometimes he can show up and bite you, and I would expect him to have a pretty good football game because the Bills aren't always great against tight ends. We have 3 solid tight ends in Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid, and then a rookie in Jackson Hawes. All can catch the football, all can block. Dalton is more of that outside receiver that's very, very hard to catch or get a hold of. Dawson is a blocker that's going to sneak up and grab balls on you. And then Jackson Hawes is very much one of the best blockers on the team as a rookie and can also catch the football. But they're going to work the ball down the field. I have been disappointed that they have not stressed defenses more with the pass. I feel like, great, James Cook is electric and amazing and doing awesome things. Maybe you throw an 18-yard ball down the field once in a while. They've lived in that space of they haven't really needed to. So why take the risk? And I'm sure that you've paid attention as everybody else has. Josh Allen has eliminated turnovers for the most part from his game. And a lot of that is based on the fact that he's not forcing the ball. He's not pressing defenses because he doesn't really have to. So it'll be interesting to see how the Bills come out and play this coming off of a loss. If anything changes, Coach McDermott said that a couple times in the Patriots game, the offense got a little bit cute, which was he doesn't normally do that to his coaching staff or his players. So it'll be interesting to see if they just line up and not play smash mouth football. They play zone read, but it's going to be interesting to see how it develops. Yes, expect to see a lot of James Cook.
Yeah, and I know all James Cook fantasy managers are really hoping to have a bounce back game there. He's the linchpin of my dynasty team for sure. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the key here is that the Falcons, they've given up yards on the ground. It hasn't been egregious yet, but this is, I think, the first team they're going to come against who is probably willing to really just pound the rock if they need to and try to limit mistakes. I think it would be wise of the Bills to take the Falcons passing defense seriously. I'm not sure they're really like number 1 NFL pass defense. Like, I'm not really buying into that, but AJ Terrell hasn't been here the whole time. He's their best cornerback. He's likely to be back. That gives them, I think, a much better matchup option against someone like a Keon Coleman, who the rest of the corners they have are just not big body corners. They're all relatively small, kind of versatile inside-outside guys who have all played well. Like D. Alford, got to give him a shout-out stepping in for Terrell for 2.5 games. Really just the Commanders game. Deebo Samuel gave him a hard time, and that was a resurgence by Deebo Samuel. Shout out to him for kind of reinvigorating his career in Washington. But this is a Falcons secondary that is very dangerous. So many ball hawks everywhere out there. 2 rookies, including Xavier Watts, who was the rookie of the month defensively. He's already got 2 interceptions and probably has at least 3 others that he dropped. So he's been fantastic. That's allowed them to move Jesse Bates kind of into this robber role that he has really never gotten to play in his career because teams have always needed him to play deep. So that's something to monitor what they do with Jesse Bates. They could use him a little bit more creatively now that Watts can handle the back end stuff. And the other thing we know is that the Falcons are going to blitz. They have the number 1 blitz rate in the NFL.
They better not.
I think this is a team that I would not do that against. And we saw a rather insane blitz last week against Marcus Mariota, where they played man and then blitzed the linebacker. There was nobody home. That did not work out for them. So I hope that they maybe learned their lesson from that type of blitzing. But
for your listeners, Josh Allen is one of the best, if not the best, blitzed quarterback in the league. And if they do that, take him for 100 yards rushing because you're gonna lose him. Like he's gonna be gone. So
yeah. And yesterday on our live show on Wednesday night, we really talked about like how can the Falcons kind of, still they may blitz, but they need to do it creatively. They can't just send 5 and expect it to work out. And they've got a couple of unique players that they can use as QB spies that they haven't really leaned on yet. Divine Diablo, who came over from the Raiders, has been kind of their do-it-all middle linebacker. He's very athletic. He's someone that they could leave back there in zone coverage and as kind of a quasi-spy. But the other one to watch would be Jalen Walker, the rookie, who was kind of, I think a lot of people that like Jalen Walker said, like, this could be one of his niches, could be really like letting him do delayed rushes or letting him kind of drop into short zone or just kind of reset the edge and watch quarterbacks because he's got much better lateral and sort of backwards mobility than most edge rushers have. He's kind of an edge rusher in a linebacker body. So curious to see if this is the game where they let Walker kind of spy a little bit or delay his rush and maybe replace, like do some fire zone stuff where they drop him off the edge and blitz Caden Ellis, who they blitz all the time. And Ellis has even been playing some edge as well. It's going to be really interesting to see how they do it because they have to keep their discipline against Josh Allen. Otherwise, he's going to make them pay.
Well, the best way to beat Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills is to effectively try to do to them what they're going to try to do to you, which is keep Josh Allen in the pocket. Don't let him escape, whether it's to the right or the left. A lot of quarterbacks, Drake May right now, and Josh Allen was this way, was great to his right, young. Josh Allen was, and had trouble to his left. So we worked on it. Now he's dangerous, left or right. The best way to beat the Bills is to shut down James Cook, right? So try to limit him and then keep Josh Allen in the pocket and expect them to do the same thing. 12, 14 play drive, make them make some mistakes, make them go 3 and out or whatever, or just turn it over, punt the ball, not turn it over necessarily. Blitzing Josh Allen, all you're going to do is excite the kid and you're going to get him you're going to get trash talk Josh Allen mode, which is once you get to that point, that's where Josh Allen just becomes unstoppable. Like if he's running the ball and stiff arming people and hurdling people and like avoiding the blitz and like doing all that escape artist stuff that he does and then hitting guys downfield, that's not a game you want to play with Josh Allen. You want him to be as bored as possible so that he does chuck a ball 70 yards downfield and it gets intercepted, which is what the Jets have done to the Bills for years. That was Robert Saleh's whole game plan against Josh Allen. I'm going to bore you to tears, Josh, until you get impatient and then throw the ball 50 yards downfield, and then we're going to pick it off. And they were great at it. But yeah, I think you want to lull them to sleep as much as you can.
Yeah. This is a spot for Jeff Ulbrich, who was the Jets defensive coordinator for a lot of those years under Robert Saleh. He should know what to do and what not to do here. And I do hope that they pull off of the aggressiveness a little bit here and get a little bit more creative, play a little bit more coverage, because especially with, I think with Terrell out, they were like, we can't leave D. Alford out there any longer than absolutely necessary. And we're just trying to get guys to get their clock sped up so they didn't have time to pick on their weak link in the secondary. If Terrell's back out there, like you said, the Bills, I think, have a number of very good number 2 type options. I think Khalil Shakir is super underrated. Yep. I mean, he's arguably the number 1 target.
We call him beef tallow because he's slippery. Yeah. Guys can't get their hands on him. But yes, keep going.
No, so I love Khalil Shakir. He's on. I just super reliable flex play in fantasy. Just he's going to get you 10 points every week, and you can do much worse.
there is no Drake London on this football team. There is no Lad McConkey. There is no guy that's going to eat. But one of those guys is going to have a good game. More than likely, Dalton Kincaid is a tight end, and then one of the wide receivers is going to get 80 yards. The question is which one. And
Yeah.
that's a game you don't want to play as a fantasy guy or a
No.
sports bettor. It's like just avoid them all. Just stay away from them. Like
Yeah.
it's just not a fun game to play. But
No, I think after week 1, everyone that was kicking themselves for not drafting Keon Coleman, and then I was like, oh no, wait, this is after week 1. Then I was like, okay, week 2.
Just be
yeah,
patient.
yeah, don't worry, it'll go back to normal. But yeah, this is definitely a spot where the Falcons are. I imagine they're gonna see what they can do, if they can be effective in zone coverage. That's typically the best way to approach Josh Allen so he doesn't break free for enormous gains. But the Falcons love to play man coverage, and they may trust their corners to match up against these guys. We'll see. They've, like you said, the Bills are probably going to play a lot of 12 personnel. Or
13. Yeah.
So that you imagine Falcons are going to get more linebackers on the field. I do wonder if we're going to see, like I said, Jalen Walker maybe playing a little bit of a quasi sort of Sam linebacker role more this week than he has in weeks past. It'll be really interesting, really fascinating to see, because we said Jeff Ulbricht's got as much experience as anyone going up against Josh Allen in this Bills offense. So definitely a matchup to watch. I think by the end of this one, we'll know if this Falcons defense is as legit as they appear to be on paper, and if their run defense is going to be a huge issue going forward against these teams that can really pound the rock.
It's also going to be visually electrifying as the Bills are in their 65 AFL championship jerseys and helmet, the standing Buffalo Whites, the Stormtrooper jerseys, as we like to call them, and you guys are wearing your red helmets too. And I'm very excited just about the visual aesthetic as a 52-year-old football fan of this game. I love this jersey combination for the Bills, and to be honest with you, I love this jersey combination for the Falcons too.
Yeah, I don't have any sourcing on this, but my belief is that they will go to this red helmet, black, more classic look as their next jersey iteration, which I thought was going to happen this year. I think it's going to happen next year, especially if they're maybe making the playoffs and generating a bunch of hype. That would be nice. It's been 7 years now. Let's not make it 8. But impeccable style matchup. We're going to be using the thumbnails from this game for the foreseeable future as just the most elite look for both of these teams.
And for your listeners that aren't Bills fans, I'm sure, and don't have a ton of Bills history outside of they lost 4 Super Bowls. Yes, I said 65 AFL championship jerseys. So the Bills were AFL champions in 64-65 the last 2 years before the NFL merged with the AFL. And then the first year when the Chiefs played the Green Bay Packers in that first Super Bowl, the Chiefs beat the Bills to actually go to that Super Bowl. And coincidentally, the Bills beat the Chiefs to become the 65 AFL champions. So there's a lot of rich history and tradition just in those jerseys, which is awesome, which is why we love them so much. So
yeah, that's fantastic. And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of Falcons fans are like, oh, we suffered the most with that Super Bowl loss. And now I would argue strongly that 4 straight Super Bowl losses is more painful. Yes, the Falcons' 1 loss was probably the most painful individual loss, but there's more to life than just, short-term pain, guys. All right. It's complicated.
The bizarreness of the whole thing is it's the immediate go-to. You guys lost 4 Super Bowls. Yeah, but the Bills were the winningest team in the NFL in the 90s. Nobody won more games in the 90s than the Buffalo Bills, that Jim Kelly era Buffalo Bills, but they couldn't close out the last game of the season. So it's a really strange kind of like, we were damn good. Nobody could stop us until the last game of the year.
Yeah. Crazy stuff. But Joe, really appreciate you coming on. It was a joy to talk to you guys. He's Joe Miller at Joe Miller, Wired over at Overreaction Buffalo, also on Believe with us. Anything else you want to close on, Joe, before we wrap up?
No, I'd like to say good luck, but I'm not gonna. But appreciate you having me on. It was an absolute pleasure. So anytime you want to have more Bills conversation, would love to have it. This was a treat. Appreciate it. Appreciate the
Absolutely.
invite.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on and giving us that Buffalo insight. I'm a Buffalo newbie. I haven't been thrown through any tables yet, so I haven't gotten the full experience.
Me either.
Yeah. But guys, thank you so much for joining us here on the Dirty Birds Brews podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm Kevin Knight of Falcoholic Kevin. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe. Really helps us out. If you're listening to podcast audio, 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice goes a long way. If you want to support the show, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live or the YouTube channel memberships, both great options. We will be back Monday night after the game for a not quite as late post-game show because it's a 7:15 start. So appreciate that, NFL. So I don't have to do the 3 a.m. post-game conversation. Yep. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back real soon for what hopefully will be more than just an impeccable style matchup. Hopefully a great primetime game. The Falcons typically deliver good primetime performances, whether they win or not, and we know what to expect from the Buffalo Bills. So hopefully a healthy game, and maybe the Falcons, if they don't win, can at least make us feel good about the performance. at the very least. So thanks, guys, so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.
Go Bills.